What's up, Bruins fans? I'm here to give you the latest info on your beloved Boston Bruins. In this video, I'm going to do a deep dive into the offseason and try and answer the question, are the Boston Bruins better now? To be able to answer that question, I think we need to start looking at the year that was and what our expectations were going into last season. Hit the highlights and the lowlights and look at their weakness so we can know what they needed to improve. We'll look at their strengths as well, but we'll have to focus on what they could have done better. Going into last season, the outlook wasn't too positive, I feel. They had lost their first ballot Hall of Famer in Patrice Bergeron to retirement, who can never have been replaced, even with a simple free agent signing. It's been one thing to lose Patrice Bergeron, but to add, they also lost future Hall of Famer David Krejci as well, which can be devastating to any hockey club. The experience, the skill, and not to mention the points are gone. In Bergeron's final season with the Black and Gold, he scored 27 goals and got 31 assists for 58 points, plus won another Selke Award for being the best defensive forward in the NHL. So Sweeney was tasked with replacing the points total plus his defensive prowess. Then add David Krejci's 16 goals and 40 assists for 56 points, and you truly wanted to claw your eyes out as a Bruins fan to start the year. If you thought the Bruins would regress, then that's fair assessment because you're losing two huge pieces up front. Both players were known as some of the best at their position, even at their age, and Sweeney didn't go out and sign anyone to replace them. And because of cap reasons, he couldn't. So going into last season, they needed help down the middle and help on the back end. They subtracted more than just Bergeron and Krejci. They lost Taylor Hall, Nick Foligno, Garnet Hathaway, Thomas Nosek, Tyler Bertuzzi, Connor Clifton, and Dmitry Orlov. This is a massive departure for any team, but Orlov, Bertuzzi, and Hathaway were all trade deadline pickups because the Bruins went all in. They won the President's Trophy and were picked to win the Cup, but the kiss of death, the President's Trophy, they get knocked out in the first round in embarrassing fashion to the Florida Panthers, who we now know to be one of the best teams in the NHL and currently the Stanley Cup champs. So what does Sweeney do? He went out and signed JVR, Milan Lucic, Kevin Shattenkirk, and Morgan Geekie. All these players helped in their own way, besides Lucic this season, but pale in comparison to who they replaced. We got to see Johnny Beecher, Matthew Patra, Jacob Lauko, and Ian Mitchell all make the team out of camp and inject the new youth movement in Boston. I was one of the people that thought the Bruins had no chance, to be totally honest. But did they ever prove me wrong? Bruins found that they had the replacement for Bergeron and Krejci all along. Well, at least in points production. I'm not kidding myself thinking Coyle and Zacha replaced the skill set for Bergeron and Krejci, though. That just can't be done. Cole finished the season with 25 goals and 35 assists for 60 points and was a competitor at the dot, being the Bruins' go-to faceoff guy in Bergeron's absence. Zacha fit in so well with Pasta, was almost a seamless transition as he scored 21 goals and got 38 assists for 59 points. Zacha developed amazing chemistry with Pastrnak and made me realize how good of a passer Zacha is and a player. Patra was injured early but showed signs of what to come and hopefully healthy next season. Beecher filled in the bottom six role well and was a whiz at the faceoff dot and helped win some key draws. Swayman overtook the reigning Vezina Trophy winner in Ullmark and became the starter by the end of the season. Both goalies, though, played exceptionally well and were a big reason the Bruins were for making the playoffs last season and finishing second in the Atlantic with 109 points. Marchand was named captain, wore the C with pride, and played the most discipline I have seen him in years, but also had a down year when it comes to production. He got the same exact number of points, which was 67, but he played more games. He finished a full 82-game season last year with the Bruins, which was his first full 82-game season since 2013-14. He did manage to score 29 goals, which was more than the previous year when he scored 21. He just looked a bit slower out there. So I'm hoping that he was dealing with an issue instead of regressing. He is an important player to the Bruins roster, and we need him at 100%. Pastrnak didn't get the same total for goals as the previous year, but was able to get 47 goals and 63 assists for 110 points, but truly became a more complete player last season. Pastrnak was able to contribute on and off the puck and took his years of learning for Patrice Bergeron to good use. I truly hope his hip is a lot better for next season because the team is going to need him. Now to the back end, which is always a bright spot for the Boston Bruins. Honestly, like for their whole history. Well, at least as long as McAvoy is leading this group. McAvoy proved that he's one of the best defensemen in the league last season, being the leader of the group on the back end and laying out killer body checks when needed and scoring timely goals. Hampus Lindholm regressed big time from the previous season. Most players on the team got less points last year than they did before, but Lindholm went from 53 points in 22-23 to 26 points in 23-24. Didn't look like himself at all from the previous year. Lohrei emerged as a talent to watch out for on the blue line, as his play in the playoffs has all but put him on most people's projected rosters for this year. So going into last season, the Bruins needed help down the middle, help on the back end, and some scoring. Going into this offseason, the Bruins needed help down the middle, help on the back end, scoring, and honestly, a bit of size. So far, they've lost Jake DeBrusk, Pat Maroon, Kevin Shattenkirk, Dan Heinen, Jasper Boquist, JVR, Matt Grzelcyk, and Linus Ullmark. So right off the bat, we lost a Vezina caliber goalie and easy 25 goals a year in DeBrusk. Losing Ullmark this offseason will probably hurt more than DeBrusk in a lot of ways. I can think they can replace his scoring, and the time in Boston seemed to run its course. His streaky play at times was always something to drive fans crazy, but we must admit when it came to the playoffs, he was one of the best players on the ice. Ullmark, though, provided the Bruins with confidence when Swayman wasn't in the net. The Bruins had an embarrassment of riches between the pipes and had 2 starting goalies. Ullmark's eventual raise at the end of this year made him expendable, as the Bruins already decided they were going to go with Swayman and showed us that in the playoffs. In return for Ullmark, the Bruins got back in the first round, which was important, and selected Dean Letourneau. Then, and honestly, that pick has looked great because he looked fantastic at development camp. Mark Kastelic, who is a big body center who instantly helps out on the bottom 6, is great at faceoffs as well. Kastelic is 6'4" and can skate, so he will be a nice addition to the bottom 6 in Boston and a good presence in front of the net. The controversial part of the return was Jonas Korpisalo, who had a lot of people, including myself, weren't too happy about him being part of the return. I have since come around on him. It's now known that goalie Bob spoke very highly of him to Sweeney and worked with him in LA. If goalie Bob says he's good, I'm going to go with the professional. So we might all be surprised with one of the best decors in the league might do to Korpisalo. So for now, I remain optimistic about Korpisalo as the backup to Swayman next year, unless Bussy stands on his head in camp and steals that spot. Now the loss of a 25-goal man, Jake DeBrusk. Some say he wasn't replaced, but I think the Bruins decided they need to fill a need rather than bringing back DeBrusk and I guess Heinen. There isn't enough money to go around, but with the money the Bruins had, they brought in Elia Lindholm. Lindholm has been rumored to the Bruins for a couple of seasons now, and Sweeney said it was no secret that they coveted the player. Lindholm fills a need for the Bruins they've had since the beginning of last season, and I feel makes the lineup more complete. Lindholm is a very good defensive center. He's no Bergeron, but maybe Bergeron light, we can say. Lindholm has had some high offensive numbers in the past when playing with highly skilled players, and what better player to play with next year than David Pastrnak? I would expect Lindholm to be more impactful for the Bruins this year than last season he was in Calgary. I expect to see Lindholm that we saw in the playoffs for Vancouver. It also allows young players like Lysell, Durant, or Merkelov to try and make the roster and see some ice time. Sweeney mentioned his willingness to let the kids try and make this team. I would think Lysell and Merkelov have a very strong chance of making the Bruins out of camp and hopefully providing an impact. Merkelov was exceptional last season in the AHL and showed he could scoring touch to go with his speed. Lysell is crafty and his hockey sense is off the charts and can skate like the wind. Both played very well in Providence last season and have earned a look at this year in camp and maybe fill the void that was left from Jake DeBrusk. The other need that they had was to fill the back end, primarily on the left side, and they wanted some size with snarl. They couldn't have done any better than signing 6'6" Nikita Zadorov. Zadorov is already winning over the fan base and the media from the first press conference, saying, I probably spoke to like 10 to 15 people before making a decision to sign here, and I haven't heard a bad thing about the organization, the coaching staff, or the city, or how people get treated here. And I feel like it fits mentally for me as well. Win or nothing. You know what I mean? I feel like the city is so culturally engaged in their sports. Like, you look at the 4 teams in here, they all have been winning. They've all won championships, and fans expect you to win every year. I like the pressure, and I think it drives me. Zadorov will be a force on the ice and move players from in front of the net with ease. Bruins haven't had a defenseman like him since Chara, and Zadorov has already asked not to be called Big Z, out of respect for Chara. Zadorov isn't just a brute, as he has a cannon of a shot and he can skate. He may be large, but he moves very well out there, and the Bruins are going to be able to play him on any pairing depending on the situation. I wouldn't be surprised if they test him out right away alongside McAvoy to see if there's any chemistry there. McAvoy started his career playing alongside Chara, and they played very well together, and Chara allowed McAvoy more space to carry the puck and be more impactful offensively. JVR, Grzelcyk, Boyquist, Maroon, and Shattenkirk aren't losses the Bruins are going to feel, and I'm going to guess that they have some vets invited out to camp on PTOs that might fill in that 8th spot on defense and some bench roles for the forwards. I think they plan to go with the roster as is right now and let the youth fill in those gaps. I think Morgan Geekie, who was a great signing last year for the Bruins, will get an opportunity to play in the top 6 on wing as well next season. Geekie will be the new Heinen this upcoming season, as he'll be their Swiss Army knife. He can play any situation at any position. 17 goals and 22 assists last year is nothing to shake a stick at, and I feel those numbers will increase this upcoming season with more opportunities that will be presented to him. Max Jones is 6'3", bottom 6 signing Sweeney did this summer, but I don't necessarily think he makes the club out of camp. Jones played 52 games for Anaheim last year, getting 15 points in a minimal playing time. His size is what gets him a close look to make the Bruins roster, but if Sweeney keeps it to his word, there are some young players that will get a shot to make this team as well. I think this is the first year in a long time where we're going to see some battles to make the Bruins and earn a spot. Otherwise, the roster is the same roster that got us 109 points last year. The biggest subtraction would be Ullmark, obviously, as Lindholm fills the need the Bruins had, plus brings the same offense DeBrusk had, and maybe even generate more. The defense is going to be harder to play against, and you could make a case the Bruins have the best defense in the Atlantic and one of the tops in the league. The only way I could see the Bruins being worse next year would be injuries, or Korpisalo is the goalie some of us saying he is and not what goalie Bob says he is. I wouldn't be surprised though if Frederick has a career year for the Bruins and scores probably around 20 goals next year. He's going to be provided more opportunity to chip in offensively, and when he's been given given those opportunities in the past, he's run with them. Bruins are going to be faster, bigger, harder to play against, and have more stability down the middle. Moving Zach out of the wing on the line with Lindholm and Pastrnak sounds like a formidable line that is going to generate offense. The Bruins will need players like Patra, Beecher, and Lowry to take the next step in their development, but I haven't seen any warning signs. They should have Swayman in net, who showed at the end of the year and in the playoffs that he's an elite goalie in the NHL. I have no doubt he signs, and I can't see him regressing next season, as he looked great at every level in every situation he's had in his career. Bruins cornerstone pieces of Pastrnak, McAvoy, and Swayman aren't even close to being past their prime and only going to get better. So at the beginning of this video, I asked, are the Bruins better? My answer is yes, because they filled the needs with Lindholm and Zadorov, and they instantly make the Bruins better from last year. Lindholm and Zadorov aren't just your run-of-the-mill free agent signing. They're both impactful players that make the Bruins better at the positions and are huge upgrades from last year. Ullmark is a loss, but he doesn't play in the playoffs or every game, so I think the Bruins can overcome that loss. I expect the Bruins to battle for first place in the Atlantic because they got better than the rest of the teams in the Atlantic. The Atlantic is still one of the toughest in the league, but the Bruins are now one of the toughest teams to play against in the league. That's a wrap on today's video. To stay up to date on all the news surrounding the Boston Bruins, please subscribe and drop me a like. If the news breaks surrounding the Bruins, be sure to check out the channel. If you have already subscribed, thank you, and I'll see you next time.